Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Kevin sent me a note, said, Steve, check out this story involving an airline. And this one got picked up by the news over in England. Independent.co.uk ran the story. Airline kicks 14-year-old off flight and leaves her alone in the airport over a weight imbalance. Not her weight, but I'm guessing the weight of everything on board the airplane. The airline said they did not know the girl was an unaccompanied minor because how could they possibly figure that out? Katie Hawkinson wrote this. A 14-year-old girl was left stranded after an airline removed her from a flight over a weight imbalance. The woman boarded a Porter Airlines flight from Toronto to Victoria on August 30th after visiting family, according to the CBC. However, after she took her seat, a flight attendant said she had to leave the aircraft. So she said, I was just kind of really confused. I thought I was coming back to my seat. I thought they were just going to take my bags, she told the CBC. As soon as I got off the plane and I saw the door had closed, that's when I started to get really anxious. Thankfully, her father, who dropped her off at the airport, was able to come and pick her up. I was glad that my dad was there because if he wasn't, I would have been alone. She was stuck in Toronto overnight and rebooked on a flight for the next day. Now, the airline removed her from the flight due to a weight imbalance, but the staff did not know she is an unaccompanied minor, a spokesperson claimed. And again, a 14-year-old, and you're taking her off the plane, wouldn't you ask her, by the way, how old are you? So a spokesperson told the CBC that their team asked for volunteers to travel the following day to Victoria. When none came forward, passengers were selected based on their fare type. It was not known to our team at the time that she was a minor, but they basically looked at the fare type, the type F-A-R-E, fare type, and apparently her ticket was inexpensive, I'm guessing. So parents can purchase an unaccompanied minor plan for their kids who are over 12 for $100, and that's according to the CBC. And that service is required for children aged 8 to 11. And the plan ensures that kids can't be deplaned. So if you got a kid 8 to 11, you have to buy this unaccompanied minor plan to go along with the ticket. And of course, if they're 12 or up, you can if you want to. But it says that guarantees that the kids can't be deplaned. But I find it kind of strange that kids can be deplaned if they're over 12 and haven't bought this plan. Now, the parents did not know about the service, so they treated the 14-year-old like she was an adult. Her mother said the service should be automatically provided to kids 12 and older, or perhaps they should tell you about it and make sure you understand this. And maybe they do, but it still does seem odd to me. So of all the people on board the plane, they go, well, let's look at the cheapest fare there, and it's this kid. They put my child in imminent danger, the mother said. It was completely negligent, and it shouldn't happen to any other minor. They're providing a service saying we know these people are at risk, and they're saying if you don't pay for the service, you're treated as an adult traveling. It's just absolutely ludicrous. So I am kind of curious about that because I've been in situations before where they say, does anybody want to fly later? We'll bribe you. And they offer you all kinds of stuff. I've heard money, I've heard vouchers, I've heard all kinds of stuff. And I've never been in a situation where I took that simply because I usually had to get back to where I was going or get where I was going. And so when you have a plane load of people, and I realize that planes are different sizes, so it maybe there's a lot of people or not as many people, and they're deciding they have to kick one person off. They got to take one person off for weight. The plane's going to fly with one empty seat. I wouldn't think the 14-year-old would make as big of a dent as someone like, say, myself. I'm not volunteering, but I'm simply pointing that out. But also, what's a 14-year-old weigh, really? But I wonder if there are other people with that fare who are older. And so the thing is, they go, how do we know how old she is? This isn't an unsolved mystery, okay? Spock is not going to show up and start narrating this story. You ask her, how old are you? And you have to remember that kids oftentimes don't grasp a situation as well as an adult does. And many kids in the presence of adults often go quiet, meaning they don't start jabbering away, asking questions or talking. I've met some who do, but many of them don't. So you walk up to a 14-year-old kid and go, you have to get off the plane. Oh, okay, they get up and off the plane. Wait, why is that door closing? And so it is a strange one, no matter how you slice it. But I also wonder about the imbalance on the plane, because an imbalance implies it's where the weight is as opposed to being overweight. But I've heard it before where the airline has said, this plane is full and we're having all kinds of issues with how much is coming on board this plane. And I know they do watch that, but I think they also tend to estimate it based on how many people there are and how many bags got checked and blah, blah, blah. And I'm sure they've got formulas and algorithms and so on. But again, how much weight does a 14-year-old girl represent in this equation? And it really does make me wonder. So it's a crazy case. And I understand that when they kick you off the plane for no reason other than you're simply baggage, you're too much weight, that they're going to fly you later. She flew the next day. But a 14-year-old is going to have a harder time figuring that out. And if her dad hadn't still probably been in the proximity of the airport, that could have been a real serious issue. So I remember one flight I took, and it was the nightmare flight I took, and everything went wrong with a particular flight. I was flying from Los Angeles back to Detroit, and the plane took off, and in the air, steward came by and goes, "Is anybody here going to Detroit?" And I'm like, "Oh God, this can't be good." And I raised my hand, and she comes over, she goes, "Your flight out of Denver has been canceled." Now, we were going to Denver then on, and I said, "When did that happen?" She goes, "Oh, I don't know, a couple hours ago." I go, "So why didn't you tell me before we got on the plane?" And she kind of looked at me like the deer in the headlights thing, like, "Your flight's been canceled," and just walks away. And of course, they didn't tell me because they wanted me to be on that flight so they could make money off that flight. They could have told me your flight from Denver has been canceled, therefore you should take an airline someplace else to get back to Detroit. But they didn't tell me that. And one of the things that we encountered, that is everybody on board the plane, is we got to Denver and it was a snowstorm, and there's a snowstorm all throughout a couple states. And it was a zoo. It was just a zoo. There was just people everywhere, lines of people laying on the floor, people sleeping, people, just chaos. And we were told, "Oh, you got to go down and get in line down here and get your ticket fixed so you can figure out what to do." And so I remember running past all these people, going around a corner and realizing, oh, that's the line you're walking past. So you go all the way back here and get in line. And however long it took to get to the front of the line, it was well over an hour. But I was standing next to a little girl who was by herself. And I asked her, I said, "So what's your story?" And she goes, "I was trying to get to someplace else and my flight's been canceled." And she was, without question, I'm guessing 14, 15, maybe 13. I didn't ask her age, but she was young and she was flying by herself. And so, now interestingly, because I was in back of her in line, when we got to the front, I heard her tell the people, "I'm trying to get here. My parents are there. I am," and she said her age, and she was underage. And one of the agents at the kiosk or wherever it was that we were standing said, "Oh, okay, we'll take care of you." And they did, because they knew her age. But again, it didn't take rocket science to figure out how old she was. But she told them, but if she hadn't, I'm sure they would have asked. I assume they were going to ask, So anyway, that day I spent a big chunk of that evening, actually, into the next morning, trying to get on board a flight. Eventually got to Chicago, then to Detroit, and made it home only about 12 hours late. But I still wonder what would have happened if I'd been told before I got on the original flight, "Oh, by the way, your flight's been canceled. You may need to redo this entire trip." I could have done that, but wasn't given the opportunity. So airline kicks 14-year-old off flight and leaves her alone in the airport over weight imbalance. It happened in Canada, but I suspect our airline industry is very similar to ours. Airline said they did not know the girl was an unaccompanied minor. Katie Hawkinson wrote that. Kevin sent it. It's from the independent.co.uk. questions, your comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Facts are meaningless. You could use facts to prove anything that's even remotely true.